Hi, and welcome to the third in the series of videos on rollerball. Now, I did ask you in the last video to finish off the movement. What we're going to try and do here is get the vertical input using the same class as we used before, input.getAxis, and this time we store it in a floating point variable called zInput, and I also multiply that by the same force multiplier. And make sure that you use that zInput variable in the third parameter of the add force function. So that should give you complete movement forward, backwards, right and left. If your code looks exactly like this with these three lines, then everything will be good. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to make a camera follow class so that the camera moves when the ball moves, because at the moment it's fine, you can position it far enough away, but it's not particularly realistic. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to add in a new component. We're just going to call it new script, and I'm going to call this camera follow, and it's going to make a really simple camera follow class. So we'll create and add this. In theory we should double click because we've already synchronized the project through the Open C# project. We should double click and we should go to this. There was one thing actually I was going to show you inside MonoDevelop. If you like this darker look to the code, you find this through the tools and options, and if you go all the way down to syntax highlighting, you can see that the default one is kind of a basic color scheme. The one that I'm on is a solarized dark, and you can change that and just click OK and it'll change the color scheme so it's a bit easier on the eye. Right, so we've got a camera follow script that we're going to write, a camera follow class that we're going to write. Now first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to have to be able to find out who the player is. So what we're going to do is we're going to say public, and we're going to say game object, which is the top level of every single object within Unity 3D, and we're going to call this game object target. Now what that gives us now is a variable that we can access throughout our code. Because it's at the top here, it's in scope within this class. So inside start or inside update we can access this target. Now game object is the granddaddy object. So for example, if I type in target dot transform, we're accessing the transform component of the target, and we are able to get its position, which would be very handy for what we need. Right now this is empty. If we try and access target, we will get an error, and I'm just going to show you that. So if I say target dot transform dot position, and if I make the current transform dot position equal to this, what it's going to do here is it's going to set the small t, by the way, this probably needs explanation, the small t here, that signifies that this is the transform for this object. In other words, whichever object this camera follow class is attached to, this is the transform for it. So if we have saved that, if I go back to Unity and we click on the main camera again, this script is accessing with the small t the transform component of the object it's attached to. So it will be the camera's transform position. Okay. Now I haven't set this here, so if I do try and run this, I'm going to get a little error that comes in down the bottom in my console that says unassigned reference exception. Now you'll find this a lot. That's not helpful. Unassigned reference exception doesn't mean an awful lot. This bit is a little bit more helpful. The variable target of camera follow has not been assigned. You probably need to assign it. And that's basically what you have to do. You follow this instruction even though it's in big words. But basically if there's a none anywhere in here, in any of the scripts or any of the components, then it's probably not a good thing. So you should really fill this up if we're going to use it. So I can fill this up by hitting the dot here, or by dragging the target object that I want from here. So I know it's sphere, and I'm just going to drag it in so it fills up. So now inside my code, when I reference target, which is the name of that thing that the slot that I just dragged that onto, I'll be able to reference it here and get some of its information. So, for example, its position. So any observant person will be able to realize what happens here. If I set the camera's position to the target's transform position, then I will move in exactly the same place as my ball. So as I move around, you can see that the camera is stuck inside the ball. That's probably not what you want. We need to try and find some kind of offset to add this onto, and that is where we'll do probably one of our first vector 3s. So if we create ourselves a vector 3, and we'll call this offset, and we can initialize this vector 3 to a new vector 3, and we can pass 3 values into this in order to say what those 3 values, the x, the y, and the z, will be. So the first one is the x. I'm going to say 0. The next one is the y, which is the up and down. So I'm going to make it positive 5. Actually, I'll make it 10. And the next one is the z. So I'm going to make it backwards. So that will be negative. And I'm going to say 20. And leave it at that. So vector 3 offset. Because this a vector 3 is a class, you do need to create a new instance of it when you initialize it. For something like an int, you can just initialize it just like that. You don't need to make a new number in order to do it. But with something like vector 3, often with GameObject and other Unity specific classes, you do need to do new with them in order to make use of them. So how do we use this new variable? Oh, by the way, just while I'm here, if I make this public, just like before, it'll become available in the editor and I will be able to change it. So I'll make it public so we can see it and maybe change it later. But in order to use it, the offset variable, we'll just add with a simple plus sign the offset to the current vector 3 for the target's position. So nice and simple. One last thing that we might need to do, I'll do it anyway since we're here, is if we access the current transform, so the transform of the camera, and we use a cool function called lookAt that allows us to look at a vector 3 or a transform. So if we look at our target dot transform dot position, then the camera will be rotated and orientated to face exactly to the target's position. I'm just going to save that and go back, and I'll show you that in action. I'll drop back in the code. So the vector 3 has come up here. If I hit play now, you'll see that the camera moves along with the ball as we move around. And that's basically it for this piece of code.